JB here, June 12th, 2024, pre-market rant. Gonna be really quick, about 8:51 here on the CPI and Fed day, which doesn't happen very often. Talk about the market, some of the names I'm in, some I'm looking at, go from there. S&P closed green yesterday. We had a big pullback. Well, I wouldn't say big pullback, but hit lows in the early morning, tested almost a 531 handle or so on the SPY before bouncing and then melting higher and closing right at the highs of the session. Some of it led by Apple. And then everybody waited in anticipation for this CPI data. And is it going to point to a trend that inflation's cooling? Is it going to it's going to be hotter than expected? We had hotter data to start the year, and sure enough, CPI comes in a tad under expectations, a 3.4% year over year versus 3.5% estimates, and that's prior month was 3.6. So I mean, inflation's still there, but it's, I guess, going in the right direction would be a positive sign. So it kind of gives the ammo, or at least remove some a couple months ago were saying that the Fed wasn't going to cut rates at all this year. Now I think we're back to two. We'll get the dot plot and stuff out from the Fed later today, and you have to think the first rate cut will come in September. So I think if that all plays out, the market should hold their ground here. We'll have to see. Hopefully, and I put in a watch list. Hopefully, the Fed doesn't screw this up come 2:30 when Powell does his presser. Here's a nice little slide. This is from Market Watch. I think I put in a watch list. You can go to chart channel to take a look. But a nice little share on the market's performance when the Fed has their decision and the CPI data comes out at the same time. It hasn't happened since June of 2020. But back then, it wasn't like everybody was looking at the CPI data. 2019, 2017, it wasn't the big data point. Everybody always looked at the jobs report. Now, because obviously the focus after COVID and what happened with inflation skyrocketing, CPI, PC data all become almost the most important data of the month. We'll have to see how all these things play out, but certainly bodes well. But would not rule out some crazy comment from Powell. Spooky markets, especially we're at all-time highs here. So something always I keep in the back of my head. 2 o'clock, I'm sure there's gonna be some volatility regardless of what comes out in that statement. And same with 2:30. Everybody's going to be parsing the words of Powell, seeing what he says. So that's the markets. I put on the watch list too. We're gapping up at 541 and change here. I would, keep saying the last couple weeks at least, new highs beget new highs. 540 first, 545 maybe. That'll probably be a tough nut to crack. If things do reverse, watching that close from yesterday, 536.95 or so, and then if things get really dicey, 530.31 or so. But not out of realm of possibility considering where the market's come. So individual names, I can't remember the last time I traded Apple. I was talking to Rant yesterday afternoon, but started to rally yesterday morning right out of the gate. Looking at all the headlines, the analysts, I said, "Wow, maybe people are going to jump on this." It's almost been left for dead. It's almost like people were writing it off back a couple months ago. China demand was decreasing. That was it, and then the story was over for Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Google, even Amazon, all taking the limelight. And now it's like Apple's back in the picture and only 30 billion away from taking over its number one spot that it had for market capitalization for companies. I locked my 202.50s in. Obviously, they'd be up 20, 25 bags at the close yesterday. Not going to cry over spilled milk. Happy to make some profits there. I did get some 212.50, so I locked some of those in to cover costs for a little over 100%. I held the rest into today. I think maybe it can get to over 210 possibly, but I'll probably lock the rest of my 210 strikes in, 212.50 strikes in at the open, depending when it does. If it holds 206 or so and starts to bounce, maybe I'll hold them. But I'll just probably lock those in and then move on and probably not trade Apple again for the next couple of years. So that's Apple. Spotify. I was watching Spot at the open, then I saw Apple going, took my eye off for Spot, which was a good thing because it went from 319 all the way down to 307.50 in a matter of a couple minutes, and it's moving up a little bit here in the pre-market. So I still, I'm still looking at it as a move to 330, 335 in the coming days. I'm not sure if it's gonna be today or tomorrow, but we still have a couple days, so I'll probably continue. If it gets back to 316, 317 at the open, I might look to get some spec calls for the end of the week to play for a move over 330. They're a heck of a lot less expensive today than they were yesterday at the open, so that's a good thing. And I think it breaks all-time highs in the coming days. C3AI, I put on the watch list this morning saying if it gets back over 32, and I said it yesterday too, that I would look to get some more strikes. And sure enough, what's it doing right now? It's gapping up over 32. If it holds 32, probably going to give it 15, 20 minutes to the open because it's a very fickle stock. It goes from 30, it'll be 32.40 at the open, all the way down to 31.40 in a matter of a couple minutes. If it holds 32, I'll look for some more strikes there. I've said this for the last couple weeks. I think it's headed back over 38 bucks in the coming weeks. Adobe is heading higher here in the pre-market, 469. The premiums have held up on the calls. Of course, some of that has to do with the fact that it reports earnings tomorrow after the close. The plan, and I said this already, is that to lock some of the strikes in to cover costs, some or all. So depending on what I can do before the close tomorrow, if they're not for profits, I'll probably lock them all and revisit. But I think it's set up pretty well. The average move I posted this morning, the average move for the stock over the last 8 quarters after its earnings. So the next day, so reports earnings Thursday, the Friday, that next day, it has closed up or down 6.5% over the last 8 days, at 8 quarters, and 3 of those have been to the upside, 5 of those been to the downside. I just think it's set up here for some kind of surprise. And I think even inline numbers, it goes higher, a beat and raise, and I think it starts filling gaps, 510, 520, 530. But similar thing, it's a binary play, so I don't want to be in a spot where it's in line and it falls or it misses and it drops further and my calls expire. So that's the plan, is I'll lock some in, some or all. Hopefully I'll be able to lock some in to cover costs and then ride the rest into earnings. 7% implied move. So the implied move is over the 8 earnings average. So the average was 6.5%. So I don't know if there's really, if it was a 5% implied move, maybe the probabilities there of a larger move than what the implied move would be good. But that's the risk you take. So like Adobe, hopefully maybe 475, 480 today will be great, and then lock some calls in and go from there. URI, United Rentals, just disappointing. No news, no catalyst to speak of. It's at 640 now in the pre-market. It was at 6. It closed at 627 yesterday. There was no news. It's back where it was at 9:30 yesterday. I mean, that's great. Hopefully it takes off from here, heads to the upside. Really like URI. Not going to add any more strikes on that one. Turn back over $7. Great end of day move. It seems every end of day, it's like someone has a position. They go and say, hey, get me in before the close. And it seems every time we're nearing the bell, Turn has some kind of spike into the close. Yesterday was 725 all the way up to 750 before pulling back a little bit at the end. Once it breaks $8, blue skies. I think it's off to the races. Not going to add anything there. GPCR, same with VKTX. They both sold off yesterday. I don't know if that's LLY. Great stuff. I always talk about loving biotech name and trades on biotechs, because when there's a drug or something that comes out that helps people's lives and improves people's lives, it's a win-win, especially when you're in the calls. So LLY had their positive remarks on data on their Alzheimer's drugs, which is just horrible affliction. And Biogen, which was supposed to be able to solve that, they came out with a drug that I think was just pushed through the FDA. That's probably, I mean, at the end of the day, you want to have some kind of hope for some folks, right? So at least that drug gave them hopes. But now this LLY drug looks like it actually might work. So I don't know if because of that, their stock went up. Does that mean they have a bigger cash hoard to be able to, keep VKTX out of the GLP-1 market? I don't know. But not only did VKTX sell off yesterday, GPCR did. Still looking at GPCR. It was 47 and change at 230 yesterday before the bounce closed over $50. Still like that one for 70. And VKTX just so disappointing, down 6.5% yesterday, just resuming its downtrend after its NASH data. Again, this boggles my mind. And the only case you can make for a bear, I wouldn't say only case, is the time to market and the cost to market for their GLP-1 drugs, their NASH drugs. They're going to need a partnership for NASH. So I guess those are some of the things you look at, and it's very easy without any forward catalyst, any catalyst in the next couple of weeks or what have you, for these folks who are either up to take profits and maybe they revisit, or for shorts to come in and try and make some money there. That's about it. HPQ, bull flag still setting up, closed barely in the green yesterday, up 14 cents, still setting up there. I still like that one for $40. And then last is Lamb Research. So I was looking for opportunities to get a hedge when we were selling off at the open yesterday. I thought 531 was kind of the line on the sand on the SPY. Once we started near and there, I was looking for a hedge position. ServiceNow was the name I was going to look at, but that was holding strong. But then you looked at LRCX and was showing some a little bit of selling. Stock was at all-time highs. They just announced a split. So I think there's an opportunity, or at least a name that I could play for hedge if things get a little dicey, today, especially with the Fed. So I'm going to hold my puts. Are going to take a huge hit, obviously, at the open. But the thing with LRCX, these names, so Nvidia ran up into its split. LRCX has announced the split. They're not split until October. So I'm not saying that doesn't mean the stock can't go up. I don't know if it's going to have any more to the upside on that on just the fact that it's splitting. So I think that's it. I'm trying to think of other names I'm watching. Um, HPQ is actually looking nice here. They announced their dividend yesterday. Not a big deal. They've always announced the dividend was 27 cents. So it's pretty much maintained a status quo on their dividend. Not huge news, but the stock did go up in the after hours session. Um, more news with GameStop, right? Citron Research comes out and says he's not short GameStop anymore. It's like he came out back with the huge meme run. When it went to like $30, he says I'm short GameStop, and then 2 days later, GameStop's $300. He got destroyed, and then he comes out with this manifesto saying I'm never going to short stocks anymore. I'm going to look for plays that are going to go up 10 times, things like that. And then he started to do that for a while. Then all of a sudden he's back to his old games, right? Well, yesterday was Garmin, right? Oh, I'm not going to short any stocks, but Garmin looks like it's a big opportunity to short based on Apple's new AI, whatever. So funny stuff, but I do agree with some of the stuff he says. I mean, GameStop has what, a $6 billion war chest. I'm not saying here it's the growth story of the century, but it's up there 30.49. I think I was on the rant yesterday afternoon or yesterday morning, and you were like, when I was like, when's Warren Kitty going to close his calls? His June 21st strikes, and here it is. He's back looking pretty, and who knows? Maybe it keeps going. That's about it. So hopefully a good day for Adobe, URI, AI. Look to get a position GPCR, Spotify spec calls, and look at TLT today. And if there was a signal last week, TLT was kind of the signal. It kept bouncing and heading higher. I look at TLT as kind of like the proxy for rates because it's all different. The 30, the 10 year. I just put TLT up because typically when TLT is up, that means yields are going down, right? If yields are going down, that's probably good for markets, or at least in the current environment we're in. So that's about it, folks. Let's have a great day. I'll be back on audio later. Rock and roll.